You may have heard the voice of a very talented man called Mr. Justin Mohamed. He is actually Australia's inaugural ambassador for First Nations peoples, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And yes, he does deserve a round of applause, and we're going to welcome him up. Thank you. So Justin is now going to, we're now going to hear the voices of our beautiful visitors. So thank you.
I think people would appreciate, I know we have time which we've got to move to, so I'll ask the panel to come straight up. I'm going to keep my comments very, very limited as the panel makes their way up to the podium. But before I start, I just want to say a huge appreciation and my respect to the Yolngu people for their welcome that they've given us right through this period of time. And every year that I've come here, my 6th year now, this place just, Garma gets bigger and bigger, and I'm sure everyone who will agree who's been here more than once, is just an amazing time. And we've heard from First Nations people in Australia how this is refuelling and giving us the energy to keep going. As they talked about the fire, we talked about relationships, how we can walk together, and just 3 on each side. Yeah, is that right? We've got enough seats. Oh, we've got one. Got one more. No, I don't need to sit down. Sorry. Got one seat short. Are we? No, we're right. Oh, good. Huh? I've got a seat behind me. Don't worry about me. Okay, we've got the panel set up. But we've heard a lot over the last couple of days about partnerships, about walking together, working together. We know we've got a lot more ahead of us. And today is a very special time, not only just for our guest here, which exchanged the gifts, but this is the first time that we've had an official delegation from the Pacific to come to Garma. The Australian government is trying to work, and the role that I have is to be as transparent and as possible in the sense of what is really happening here in our nation, and to have the senior men and women from their countries, respective countries and their governments to be here, unvetted, to speak whoever they want to speak to. We're really hoping to have a really good dialogue today, one to hear from them how they see what's happening in Australia with their relationship across the Pacific. Our Minister for Foreign Affairs has made it very clear that we've got to build this stronger connections to the Pacific, not just government connections, but very important, our cultural connections, which surpass any government of Australia and of the countries, but our cultural connections that have been connecting us for thousands of years and hundreds of years, and we've seen that in practice. So with that said, I'm going to keep it very short. People have already introduced themselves. I'm going to just go straight into, because I know that of our time, and I want to make sure that you have the time to listen from our esteemed and our honourable guest here. So the first speaker today, each one will speak for a period of time, and if we have time, we'll hopefully be able to take 1 or 2 questions. But our first speaker today is Honourable Gary Victor Joffa, who is the Governor of the Ororo Province of Papua New Guinea, and he's been in this role since 2012. So long has been there and has just recently re-elected in 2022 and has previously been the Commissioner of Customs Customs and as a leader also in promoting women's empowerment. So I'm going to hand straight to Honourable Gary to speak.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, people of Australia. I first would like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we stand and where we are honored to be able to present our thoughts, share our ideas about what we're doing in our respective parts of the Pacific, a very vast part of the world. If you look at the population size, you'd think the Pacific is insignificant, but if you look at the surface area, we're 1/5 of this world. We have the right to speak in this regards. In Papua New Guinea, where I am a member of parliament, we have grave challenges facing us, least of all being, or not the least of all being, climate change, or as the Secretary General for United Nations stated most recently in New York, global boiling. I think it gives us some perspective as to what's really happening. We in the Pacific have front row seats to this unfolding nightmare. What's happening rising sea levels, rising temperatures, disappearing shorelines, our atolls no longer fit for agricultural purposes, having to transport our people onto the mainland, and seeing the emergence of new diseases that we had never seen before. Strange climatic activities, disasters, etc. These are all happening, and I'm sure Australia is also witnessing the same. I have a short video that I will show. It's only about 3 minutes, but it gives you some context what I am doing as a governor. I am a governor of a small province, just 25 minutes away from Port Moresby, the capital city. The province is 22,000 square kilometers. It's about the size of Israel. It has a population of 300,000. Papua New Guinea is home to the third largest rainforest in the world, and it has 7% of the world's biodiversity. 97% of the land is owned by traditional tribes. I come from the Soriani clan of the Hunjara tribe in our province. Now, the challenge facing our tribal people is how to grapple with globalization and the forces brought to our shores by globalization. We have vast natural resources. We are rich in natural resources, but cash poor. We want to look at the world and say, you've gone ahead, you've liquidated your natural resources. You are cash rich, but natural resource poor. And now, with the challenges that are facing us, insofar as global boiling is concerned, we should sit back and take stock of what's happening before it's too late. As Sir David Attenborough said, we're not just racing to the precipice, I think we're already there. What do we do now? So the short video I will show you is just an example of what I am doing in my province with my government and some partners to try to change this narrative so that our people, who are the custodians of these natural resources that belong to the world, can continue to maintain, protect, conserve, preserve our natural environment and still find means and ways to develop their natural resources, but in a sustainable manner, so that we don't jump over this precipice that Sir David Attenborough spoke of. I'm proud to be here to observe our people and what they're doing here. I say our people, because I don't like the word indigenous. We're all indigenous to Earth. But what do we say? What are we saying when we're saying indigenous? You know, for me, we're all Earthlings, and now we need to come together and save Earth as the indigenous people of Earth. Having said that, I would ask if the video be shown, and it can give you some context as to what we're doing in my small part of the world, Oro Province, Papua New Guinea. Thank you.
The island of New Guinea is one of Earth's last cradles of abundant life. Its rainforests, in which our people have lived, nurtured, and hunted for over 40,000 years, hold 7% of all terrestrial plant and animal species in less than half of 1% of the world's land area. Papua New Guinea occupies the island's eastern portion, and in Oro Province, with 360,000 hectares, the Managlas Plateau is its largest conservation area. It teems with endemic species like birds of paradise, green tree python, Victoria crown pigeon, and the largest butterfly in the world, the Queen Alexandra's birdwing. I am officially mandated by the 153 clans of the Managlas Plateau, the guardians of those forests. My name is Gary Jufa, and I am the governor of the Oro Province. My mission is to safeguard this precious natural capital and the well-being of my people, who have secured it for all of us so far. For more than 20 years, we have been fighting illegal logging and the clearing of the forest for unsustainable agriculture, which is increasing due to mounting economic pressure. With 22,000 traditional landowners, the Managlas Plateau can be a shining example of how development and conservation can go hand in hand. We will align nature, the needs and knowledge of our local communities, and the creativity of the green economy for the outcomes we all need.
I'm speaking about my future generations, my grandsons and daughters.
Harnessing the support and science of our development partners C4 eCraft and Resilient Landscapes will help us get there faster. This initiative is being championed by the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, the Honorable James Marape, who agrees that securing our forest wealth is the key to our national prosperity. The Managlas Plateau is a unique ecosystem, a true treasure that is pivotal in tackling global climate change. We need to protect this landscape to ensure a prosperous and healthy future for the generations to come. Join us in our journey.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor, and for a small window of insight into what you're doing in PNG, and obviously I think it would resonate with many people here. With that said, I want to invite the next speaker, the Honourable Minister Mana Tale from Talavu. He's the Minister for Home Affairs, Climate Change and Environment, has been a long time activist and contributor to the many world gatherings around climate, including COP18, 21, 23. He's been to a number of those, and it's a real pleasure to have you here as part of the delegation. I'd like to welcome you up to the podium. Thank you, Minister.
Well, first of all, thank you so very much for the opportunity to be here. I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we are gathered here today, and also the Government of Australia for the invitation extended to us to be part of this very important festival and gathering. I am from Tuvalu. Tuvalu is just a small island to the north of Fiji. It used to be called the Gilbert and Ellice Island Colony during our colonial time. We were once colonized by the British, and I think they have made a mistake because we don't have any resources in return. It's just a small island, 26 square kilometers of land, and not more than 3 meters above the sea. Right now, I think it is not more than 10,000 people living in Tuvalu. Quite a lot have joined the PALM scheme and some other labor mobility schemes in New Zealand and Australia. For us, land is very important for us, despite the fact that we don't have quite a lot of land to share with, but we are not allowed to sell or to buy land in Tuvalu. We only exchange land with other family. Everything that we do in Tuvalu or in the Pacific, it's communally based. We live as a community, we dance as a community, we mourn as a community, we feast as a community. And that's part of who we are as people. It identifies who we are as people from Tuvalu and from the Pacific. For us, land plus the ocean plus God, it gives us life. And if the nexus is broken, it's equal to death. Climate change is the number one, is the greatest threat to our survival, especially in Tuvalu. We are in the front line of climate change. It is important that we take into consideration the vulnerability of Tuvalu, smallness, and how remote we are from the rest of the world. Even though we don't have much resources to respond systematically to the issue of climate change, but we will try our best to ensure that we respond to ensure the survival of our people. And Australia, the government of Australia and the people of Australia have worked closely with the government of Tuvalu and our people to ensure that we keep Tuvalu afloat. And of course, other developing partners who have assisted us in the past many years. One of the major problems that we faced in 2015 was Tropical Cyclone Pam. And may I kindly ask if they can play the video only for a few seconds. I just want to show you a glimpse of the struggle and the pain that we are going through when we talk about climate change. It's not a romantic issue. It's something that we face in our daily lives. So I want you to have a look into the video that they will be showing. This was in 2015 in my island, Waituku, where I come from. Thank you. And if you still think that climate change is a joke, come and stay with me for a year. I will show you what climate change looks like in Tuvalu. It's not a joke. It's something that we face in our daily lives. And we always wonder what will be the future for our children. And yes, other Pacific islands are so fortunate to have mountains and highlands and have spaces to move further inland. Because the biggest question for us now, those who have been living in the coastal areas, they have moved further inland. But the biggest question, how further do they have to move inland when we are only living in a strip of lands? So we are facing various and multiple issues in Tuvalu. And I don't want to take most of the time because I have other colleagues to speak with. But with this new arrangement that the government of Australia and Tuvalu entered to the Falipili Union Treaty, I believe it will be another migration pathway, a safe and secured one that has been facilitated or in the process. And seeing the Garma festival and how we were welcomed when we arrived. Despite all the problems and the challenges that you are facing in this part of Australia as First Nation people, but what the most important thing that I'm going to take back home is that despite all the difficulties, the problem that you are facing, you are able to dance. And dancing in the face of despair is literally telling us that we have hope in the future. And that's the message I'm going to take back. And Tuvalu will also continue to dance our fatele, our traditional dance, despite climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and sharing the struggles, but also giving the hope that you have as well. Next speaker is our Honourable Minister Trevor Mahaga, who is from the Solomon Islands. He's the Minister for Environment, Climate Change, Disaster Management and Meteorology. So I'd like to welcome the Minister up here now. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Trevor Mahaga. I am currently the Minister of Environment, Climate Change, Disaster Management and Meteorology. I'm just 3 months old in that position. So much has been said about climate change, but I will again talk about Solomon Islands in terms of climate change. But before I go to the topic of climate change, I want to give you a brief background on Solomon Islands. Solomon Islands is the second largest country in the Pacific. It's made up of 1.58 million economic zone in terms of area, and so it's the second largest in the Pacific. We have our own share of issues and problems and challenges in the Pacific, in Solomon Islands. And so what does climate change challenges brings to Solomon Islands? Our economy, our country relies heavily on economic sectors that are vulnerable to climate change, particularly agriculture, fisheries, tourism. And if you ever visited Solomon Islands, you will see our islands are sinking. And perhaps in the 21st century, you will witness around more than one island sinking in Solomon Islands. So that's the challenge I'm talking about here. So we actually witnessing and experiencing the impact of climate change in the Solomon Islands. So as I speak, the biggest challenge faced by Solomon Islanders is coastal erosion, because most of our communities live in the coastal areas, and they have to move inland. And further to that, our economy relies heavily on sectors that are quite vulnerable to climate change. And so it does. Climate change does have a lot of bearing on our economy. And in that regard, we will depend very much on donors like Australia to support us address the challenges that we face as a result of climate change. My take from this festival, I learned something that is very special and hearty in my mind. We talk about resilience, climate change resilience, but what I've learned in this Garma festival is cultural resilience, using the cultural know-how and traditional knowledge to counter the impacts of climate change. Climate change in Solomon Islands has an impact on social cohesion, which consequently erodes our cultural practices and traditional practices, because people are moving out from their communities, moving into areas that are new, territories that are new to their cultures. So as a result, you will witness a lot of cultural practices being eroded in Solomon Islands. So these, apart from the economic vagaries or economic vulnerabilities and challenges faced as a result of climate change, there is also cultural challenges that we face as a result of climate change. So one important area I learned during this Garma festival is cultural resilience. Thank you for the people of this land. I do acknowledge for your acceptance to being here, and also thank you to the Australian government, particularly DFAT, for allowing me to come and witness and share with the people of Australia, and especially the people of this land. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for that. And moving to our next speaker is Reverend Dr. Cliff Bird, who is a theologian, academic from Solomon Islands. There's a deep interest in the intersectionality of theology and the development, including human rights, gender equity, and ecology. So, hand over to you, Reverend.
Thank you, Ambassador. First of all, I'd like to pay tribute and honor the traditional owners of this land on which we are located. I would like also to pay respect to the leaders, past, present, and emerging. It's such a great honor for me to be part of this Pacific delegation. And as the ambassador said, my name is Cliff Bird. I am from the Solomon Islands, from the western part of the Solomon Islands. My minister has briefly introduced Solomon Islands. In the past few years, I think we've been on the news for more negative issues than positive ones. I'm pretty sure you've heard about the riots that happened. And in the geopolitical realm, we have our stories, as everybody else does. I won't go into those. But I would just like to talk about what I think would resonate quite strongly also with the indigenous peoples of Australia, but also with peoples of Australia. I work in the faith sector, prior to that elsewhere in my other life, but in the past 15, going on for 20 years, I've been in the faith sector. And I work across disciplines, and so my particular kind of interest is linking theology with development and developmental issues. We do this in the Solomon Islands and also across the Pacific, because Pacific Island is one of the most religious places in the whole world, where Christianity and faith is an everyday fact of life for the majority of people in the Pacific, not just Solomon Islands. And that realization has led increasing number of countries, and thankfully also peoples of Australia, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade have realized it, and therefore we are developing faith approaches to development and developmental issues, noting that a lot of our people, they speak the language of faith every single day. And therefore approaching those from that angle has proven for us to be very, very effective. And so I work on theological approaches to gender, ending gender-based violence, theological approaches to equality and addressing inequalities between people, approaches to human rights. And even as the Honorable Minister from Tuvalu would know, we have been working together now for going on for 20 years, and I've always been so proud to work with Honorable Maina when we talk about climate change, and increasingly approaching climate change and climate justice from theological faith perspectives, and applying that basically to development. And so we have found this approach to work quite well in countries across the region, and so we continue to do that. And we are also happy because increasing number of churches and faith communities across the islands of Oceania have come on board, knowing that this is an approach that they can associate with and they can work with. And I might like to mention, I'm very happy, I mentioned this quite a few times, that one of the things we are very happy with the Australian government is the increasing realization to this approach of dealing with these developmental issues and helping us through resourcing from DFAT to work on gender, to work on climate change through faith perspectives. And that's something that we are very, very grateful for to the government of Australia. And as I close, because of time constraints, I'd just like to say that in developmental issues, one of the ones that we are working now is what we call reweaving the ecological mat. You can Google it, it's up there. It's this approach, an alternative approach to development, developmental narrative, and an alternative approach to measuring well-being, measuring the non-financial, the non-economical aspects of well-being. That's what reweaving the ecological mat is all about. And I was the team leader of this research team, and we have published 3 resources on that. And this is looking at the way beyond the finances economy. And so let me just say this and then I'll finish. How do we measure well-being? It's been basically money, 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 cars, houses, property, and all of that. We disagree. We go beyond that. There are other measures of well-being. And we look back to our traditions, to our cultures, philosophies, and we say, these are important parts of measuring well-being. And so basic needs, yes. Community, that for us is a very important one. Healthy environment, and so on. So these, you are most welcome to Google that. But that's a big push by the churches and faith-based organizations in the Pacific now to look for and articulate an alternative way to approach development, and especially to measure well-being of our families and communities. And finally, let me just say, when we with the national referendum here in Australia, I followed that very closely. And that is because I've got so many friends, and I've got a white sister at the Australian National University, a professor-in-law, whom we adopted into our family through cultural means. And she kept me updated, and then she said one sentence: "We are mourning." And then I said, "I'm with you. I mourn with you." So in that distance, we were also affected. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend, for those deep thoughts and putting things in the right order of what is important, that things that money can't buy. So thank you for those words. Now, saving the best for last, we've got Reverend Dr. Sierra Bird, who is an ordained minister. She has been active for many years on key issues of gender across the Pacific region and across 35 member churches. So, Reverend.
Thank you. I also acknowledge the presence of the people of the past, present, and future. And with that, I want to respect them. As been said, my name is Reverend Sierra Bird, and I am also from the Solomon Islands. You might be wondering why I look like this. We have 4 Polynesian islands in the Solomons, so my father comes from one of those Polynesians, and our language is very much similar like the Maori people. My mother comes from Kiribati, so that's why I'm wearing my Kiribati traditional dress. My ancestors, they were relocated from the islands of Phoenix Islands during the colonial days to the Solomon Islands. So that's why I look like this. Just for your information as well, Cliff is my husband, and that's why we have the same surname. Because we work in this space on gender, that's also one of our approach in approaching gender equality, and also especially by approaching it from a biblical and theological perspective, and both of us both in front, facilitating and actioning together. And that's also melted the church's perspective when they see both the husband and the wife teaching and facilitating gender equality. I work for the Pacific Conference of Churches, and we have 35 member churches, 11 National Council of Churches across 19 countries, and that also includes Australia. We have 1 member churches in Australia, that is Uniting Church in Australia, and we also we work with the National Council of Churches very closely. Through the Pacific Churches Partnership Agency Network, which is called the PCPANG, and that includes the Pacific Churches, PCC, as well as the National Council of Churches throughout the Pacific, and also National Council of Churches in Australia and DFAT. We work together and discuss a lot of issues that concerns our communities both in Australia and also in the Pacific. So issues such as the PALM scheme, violence against women and girls and also children, climate change, and also First Nation. We work a lot with Reverend Mark and also Dr. Allison, and they were part of this team. For the PCC program, we have 3 pillars that grounded our work, and those 3 pillars are on ecumenism, stewardship, and self-determination. And we also have three programs that carry out those three foundations. Those are the cross-cutting programs that involve gender, children, youth, and also, sorry, it's not three, it's four, and also climate change. So some of the activities that we were doing, especially with the gender, I look after the gender desk. On the gender equality theology, we also provide spaces for dialogue with our church leaders and also the service providers in countries. We also provide spaces for all the regional feminist theologians to discuss things together, issues together, also write publication together and other things. We also collect stories for publications. For our youth, one of the main programs that also linked to Australia is we have the Pacific Australia Emerging Leaders that once a year they go to Canberra and they discuss issues among themselves, which also include the First Nation, and they also lobbying to the government of Australia regarding the issues that the youth are facing. With the children, we also have a pilot program that we carried out to 3 countries in the Pacific, Solomon Islands, Fiji, and Marshall Islands. We complete that, so it was really successful program, and it's facing, the program is focusing on protecting as well as empowering our children. So because it was a really successful program, starting this year, we'll be carrying it out to other countries, Samoa, Tonga, Vanuatu, and Kiribati. And then we also, as I said, we work with 19 countries, so after that, we'll just keep on going to other countries. For the PCC, first of all, I want to say that I thank DFAT for inviting me and to witness what's happening in this Garma festival. I'm so touched with everything. I also, because of my heart is with the children, and because I also wrote a book on child protection and care theology for the children, I saw the children dancing, and by taking them up in front last night, and the leader telling the stories and focusing on the children, those 3 girls, I was so touched on that. So I want I say that I learned a lot from this festival, and I want to conclude that to say that for us at PCC, we encourage that, and we want to make sure that what we are doing at PCC is for our people to experience life in all its fullness that God intended for its creation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend, for your thoughts and the connection to children, as we've heard, the next generation, the generation that stands in front of us, that will take our future aspirations, but also will be the caretakers and custodians of our culture, our climate, our lands, and our spiritual connection with each other. Our last speaker is Miss Mary Saini Rakowita, I think, is a visionary champion and of gender equality and women's rights in Fiji. I don't want to embarrass her, but I think it's really good for this, shout this out. I don't know if she will let you know this, but Mary Saini was the youngest female politician to be elected in Fiji's parliament in 2014. It doesn't stop there. She was also the first female minister for lands and resources, and she was the state's solicitor from 2009 to 2013, and the highest ranking female legal advisor to the government. So,
Thank you, Ambassador. My political past is something I don't like talking about. Nusachi o turangambale na maramambale tau edi banua ba turanga tau tio ina singani ua. I acknowledge the Gumach nation and people and their continuing connection to the land, waters, and community on which we meet on today. I pay my respects to the Gumach and Yolngu Mata elders, past and present. I will talk about, my Pacific family has spoken about climate change, its impact on our countries, and the nexus with culture. Theology interwoven with that. I'll throw in a little bit more. A part of the climate change journey that's usually invisible, not talked about enough, or untapped in our region. And that's the contribution of women to this important space. As an indigenous woman, culture and traditions lie central to my sense of being, my identity. It shapes my worldview about everything that touches my life, including my work. I had the Pacific Communities Gender Program. Pacific Community is an intergovernmental organization for the Pacific. The members are countries and territories of the Pacific with programs that are designed with them, for them. A critical component of that is gender equality. I grew up in a coastal village. The village was accessible only by boats. And as a little girl, I watched my mom, my grandmom, my aunts daily going out to sea to get our dinner. It looked easy, and as children would wait for them on the beach, digging out sandworms, having that for lunch, shellfish that I cannot see anymore in the village. I don't see my aunts anymore, or my cousins, going out to sea nearby to catch fish or to collect shellfish. And that's the reality of what climate change has brought to us as coastal people. Women have to go further into the sea now, leaving behind traditional roles that they would normally be able to do before. Our role in the care economy as nurturers, men are starting to do that role when women go out to sea to collect it. And different dynamics we're starting to see now, because in our way of life, for a man, that is not his role. And that starts to translate into challenges like gender-based violence. In the Pacific, we grapple with statistics that's double the global average. 1 out of 3 women in the world would have suffered some form of physical or sexual violence in their life. In the Pacific, it's 2 out of 3 women. And when you bring that to the space that I work in at the SPC, in the climate change context, weaving culture into our ways of doing, we are now looking at science interweaving traditional ways of knowing and doing into that. I'll give you an example. We have a land resources division that helps our member governments look at issues about, for example, food safety, sustainable ways of growing food. And in a village on the island where I come from, we're going back to empowering women to go back to what our ancestors used to do in preserving root crops. They would dig up a hole near the house and bury the root crops there to last for longer than it would normally do. We're supporting women in Vanuatu to go back to traditional sources of water, empowering them to look after the vegetation around these water sources for sustainability of families. And with climate change has come in great opportunities for women as well. Climate change, the impact is devastating. But in that devastation, we must find opportunities for empowerment, not only for populations generally, but particularly for women. And I'll speak about it in the context of a program we have at SPC called the Women in Energy program. With climate change, every country has made commitments on a just transition to clean energy. We're looking at ways to get women onto that boat. An example in Fiji, there's a number of women that have been trained, we call them the solar mamas. They're trained solar engineers that have got the qualification without the certificate. They go back to their villages because they prefer to be in their villages and equip their villages that way, maintain their solar systems. So, in closing, it's been a real privilege to be here and to see in action your traditional ways of knowing and doing. And that traditional way of knowing and doing must become a critical component of our development agenda in relation to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you to the panel. There's not enough time for questions, but I just want to kind of just wrap this up because I think what's been shared across the 6 panelists, but even before that, the ceremony that took place before we came up on the podium here of the gift exchange, the stories behind those gifts, we see it just kind of float up here onto this stage, and the speakers that have spoken from their own perspectives, from their nations, their roles that they play. But one of the things I keep hearing continuously right through this last few days, but also up here and even around the campfires when we start talking, the importance of culture and how we preserve that and how we ensure that we keep that as the essence of everything that we do. Whatever challenges we have, if it's with climate as mentioned, around gender, around how we govern, how we have our relationships with governments of the day, and obviously with each other right across the Pacific, culture is the essence of that. And we've heard that from each one of the speakers. So can you put your hands together again for our speakers?